Everything is very well lit, wide open, so the cage is wonderful part of the tour. The tour guide today is going to be Steve. He's a third generation gold miner, born and raised in Bigby, so he's going to give you all a great tour. Our tour guides do only work 6 months out of the year, so they really do depend on your tips to get them going through the winter months of Colorado. With that said, how are we grouped up here?
Two of us.
Alright, I'm going to grab you four first.
Going up before you go down. Yeah, okay. Squeezing right behind in front of you.
Okay.
Peek.
Family togetherness. I'm glad I put on deodorant this morning.
Oh, me
too.
Face me.
Me?
Squeeze like right here.
We're gonna be really friendly.
Get really,
real
really friendly.
Oh.
One big happy family.
Oh yeah, we're good. We have lots of room. You'll see when it's crowded.
Okay.
I'm glad I took a shower.
Okay, and I'll be talking on the way down the shaft here. So this is the main shaft on the Molly Kathleen, and this is a 2-compartment shaft. We're riding on the haulage side, so we haul all the rock up out of this side of the shaft, and then we also haul the miners and the equipment up and down on this side. And over here in front of us to the south, there's another compartment that is called a manway, and that is a series of ladders that runs all the way from the surface down to the 1,000-foot level. So if there's ever a problem with a hoist breaking down or a power outage or something along that line, we climb up out of the mine on those ladders. And if you're in good shape, it takes about an hour, hour and a half to climb out of the mine on that 1,000-foot ladder. So we don't want to do that today. And in the shaft here, we cut levels on the average about every 100 feet apart. So when you see these lights going by, well, those are the different levels, and that's where we mine back in there looking for the veins of gold. And this shaft here, it is timbered all the way down with big timbers like 6x6s and 8x8s and 10x10s. And then these cages, they ride down on guides. They're 4x6 oak wood guides. They're on the north and the south side of the cage, and they go all the way from the top to the bottom. They keep the cage from spinning around. They guide it right down through here, just like an elevator. And in that manway side, there's also an air line over there. Most of the equipment down here operates on compressed air, and so there's 2 big compressors up on the surface, and at 4-inch airline, it brings that compressed air down here for 1,000 feet, and it serves all these different levels down here with compressed air. And this shaft here is just over 1,000 feet deep. It's 1,050 feet, and that last 50 feet is called a sump, and that collects the water that drips down the shaft. When that sump fills up with water, we of course have to pump it out, but we want to stop right on the 1,000-foot level. We want no part of that sump water. It's cold and it's not too clean, and so we want to stay out of the sump. So we just hope the hoistman's sober today, man. So we're just about to hit the, I'm gonna reach the bottom here. We're just about down here. You can see the timber out here, what we call square set timber. Put in there kind of like a picture frame. So that's just one of the methods of timbering here in the shaft. But yeah, here we are. So that didn't take too long.
Okay.
If you want to just stand right over there, we'll stand away from the shaft. Hey, you did good. You did real good.
Cool.
All right.
Okay.
step and we'll just stand out here waving the shaft and then.
Okay.
Cool.
That is very deep.
I'll go ahead and close up the gate here and then we'll be all good to go. And I'll explain that bell system later on, but what I gave the hoistman there was a 3-3 cage release. If he left that cage right here on the level, he would know if we were getting on or off there. So he'll hang that up here about 5 feet. And then if there's another tour up on top, he can go pick them up. And so it's called a 3-3 cage release, and it puts the cages back in his control up on the surface. So. And the two tunnels down here, they're called crosscuts and drifts. And a crosscut is the main tunnel that goes from the shaft to the vein of gold. And then once you get on the vein of gold, well, you turn and you follow that vein wherever it goes. And that tunnel, it's called a drift. And so right now we're in the Gold King crosscut here. There we go. All right. We'll get on back this way.
I was trying to like not be in anyone's way.
And this type of mining down here is referred to as hard rock mining as opposed to like coal mining. As you notice, there's no timber in down here. It's very solid rock. It's Pikes Peak granite, so it takes a lot of drilling and blasting to get this rock out of here. And those old timers back in the 1890s, they did all that work by hand, if you can imagine. So these are the holes that we put in the rock here to put our dynamite in to blast the rock out. And the old timers, they had to drill those holes with sledgehammers and hand steel. And so this small sledgehammer, this is what we call a single jack. And then this is your drill steel, sometimes called a bull steel. And you put that up against the rock, and every time you hit it with that single jack, well, you turn it, and that kind of helps drill the hole out more evenly. And this is when you're working alone, you use those tools, but if you had a partner, you gotta do what they call the double jacking method. You can see the guy sitting down on his haunches there. He has a piece of drill steel up on his shoulder. The guy behind him has the big sledgehammer, and every time he hits that piece of drill steel with that double jack, well, the guy rotates it, and like I said, it helps to drill the hole out more evenly. And needless to say, the guy with the sledgehammer has to have very good aim. If he clocks his partner in the back of the head with that double jack, they trade off on that job every so often in paybacks. We all know about paybacks. The other complication they had here back in the 1890s, they were working by candlelight, so each miner was allowed 3 candles at the beginning of his shift, and so between the two of them, they'd have 6 candles to last the entire day. And to give you some idea what that's like, so if you can imagine trying to hit that piece of drill steel in this kind of light, well, again, you had to have good aim. And then this is what it's like when we're mining down here. It's darker than the inside of a cow down here when you're mining, because if we had all these electric lights in here, every time you blast, I'd knock the lights out. So the only light that we have to work by is this one light that I'm holding. This is a headlamp that goes up on your hard hat, and this is an LED bulb in here. It's on a rechargeable battery, and it'll last about 72 hours on one charge. So it's a very dependable light, but you want to take good care of it because it's the only light you have down here. And my dad, when he started working the mines here back in the 1930s, they used the carbide light at that time, and the calcium carbide, it comes in those cans there, and you fill the bottom half of this lamp with a carbide, which is like little gray granules. You fill this about 3/4 full, and then you fill the top half of the lamp with the water, and you open up this regulator, and the water drips down onto that carbide, and it forms an acetylene gas, and it puts a nice flame out the burner here, about 2-3 inches long, and with that reflector on there, well, it puts out a nice light. So again, this is a lot more dependable than a candle, and this is the big carbide light you hang on the wall. But my dad wore the small one right up on his hard hat, and with that small lamp, you had to keep a small can of the carbide with you all the time, because you had to refill that about every 3 or 4 hours with new carbide. So yeah, you're welcome to take photos. Take all the photos you want down here. We'll head back this way here.
It does not look like a smart idea. No, thank you.
Single time. And I apologize, I walk fast and I talk fast, but there's just a lot to show you down here in a very short amount of time. So, but anyway, after we blast with that rock, it's all broken up like this rock you see back in here, and that broken up rock we call that muck, and you have to shovel the muck up into the ore car. And then once you get that car full of rock or muck, well, you take it back out to the main shaft to be hauled up out of the mine. And out of one blast, we'll get anywhere from 15 to 20 tons of rock, and a good hand mucker, it'll take him anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes to fill one of these ore cars with a shovel. So it's a lot of work. It's a 1 ton ore car. And these pieces of flat steel here, we call those slick sheets or muck sheets. And before we blast, especially the old timers, we'll lay 5 or 6 of those on the floor. And then when that blast goes off, why it throws the rock out on those pieces of flat steel. And it's a lot easier to shovel the rock off of that than it is to shovel it off the rough. What we call mucking off the rough with that number 2 square point there. So. And I don't know if you all remember Jack Dempsey, but he was a prize fighter, and he worked over at the Portland mine, and Victor's a young man, and he started out working as one of these hand muckers, and the story goes that he was actually fired off a couple of different jobs over there because he couldn't keep up with those other muckers, but he went on to be the heavyweight boxing champion of the world, and he fought his first fight over here at the Victor City Hall, just 6 miles from here. So he was an excellent boxer. He wasn't much of a mucker, but he was a good boxer. No, he's a good guy. We like Jack Dempsey. So, and this is what we use now. This is called a mucking machine. This is an IMCO 12B mucker, and it operates on compressed air, and it works a lot like a little front end loader. And rather than talk about it, I'll just show you the mucking machine. And I'll mention this thing is kind of loud, so you may want to plug your ears. And you can step on it anywhere you can see this, but there we go. But this is how we do it now. It just makes the job go a lot faster and a lot easier. We normally fill the bucket full of rock, and I was doing that in kind of slow motion, but I have a brother-in-law, Charlie, and Charlie was really good and fast on one of these mucking machines, and he could fill this ore car here in about 2 minutes, whereas it took the old timers sometimes 15 or 20 minutes with a shovel. So, and this tunnel here continues all over the Gold King mine, and there were over 500 working gold mines here within 24 square miles at one time, and they're all pretty well interconnected underground, and we